Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm Shan Ferdinand here with Mr. Kerry
Hey,
Ferdinand.
what's going on, everyone?
Welcome to Black Lion Realty. And today we're going to talk about a topic that is near and dear to my heart, your heart, and the heart of Black Lion Realty. We're going to talk about leadership. We're going to talk about what it looks like in our brokerage beyond just the title of leadership. Let's kick it off with the definition of leadership in the military sense. What is leadership?
So, military leadership or Army leadership is providing purpose, direction, and motivation. It's the core of what we do. It's taught at every level. I just learned that that is unique to the Army specifically. We're teaching leadership at every level, having a school. So having 10 level, 20 level, 30 level. So different levels of school for different leadership. I just learned that that is mostly an Army thing or maybe a Marines thing, but makes sense. But for us, leadership is the core of what we do.
Okay. And on the civilian side, it's very similar. It's the ability to lead, to guide, to influence, and to push everybody towards a common goal. So it's very similar, but it's also very different. And I think it's interesting with the military how you guys are trained to be leaders.
Yeah, it's very much structured. And I find it baffling sometimes to deal with my civilian counterparts and what they consider leadership, where I think civilian leadership is not really leadership. A lot of times it's really about charisma.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that charisma, it could be a part of leadership, but that's not necessarily leadership. It's not providing purpose, motivation, direction. It is more of a aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
Where I see somebody, I see them, I like what they're saying, but not necessarily that they're providing purpose, motivation, direction to get or accomplish a particular task or task.
So it sounds like there's an inner conflict of what you believe leadership to be coming from a military background and what is actually modeled in the civilian world. So how do you handle that coming from military, right, a military background, and transitioning into running I guess you would consider it a civilian business and having to lead civilians as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the biggest thing is really understanding that it's not the military, because that military structure, everybody being focused on the mission, I think it was paramount.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody understood that we all went through basic training or some kind of training, some kind of introductory training. Then going from that introductory training into your specific organizations and your mission coming first, whatever that mission, whether it be tactical, whether it be support. We all had different missions to accomplish, and accomplishment of the mission was number one. Mission first, soldier always, right?
Yeah, I hear you say mission first all the time.
Yeah, mission first, soldier always. So switching over to the civilian side, I didn't really understand that other people had different priorities when they came to work. When you're in the military, you're gun ho, everybody has the same mission, get the mission done. In the civilian sector, it seems like there's more of maybe you could speak to this, it gets lost in translation on what specifically the mission is. And I've learned for me that I have to make the mission clear every day I come in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does get lost in translation. I know that, and you put it into words perfectly, because I know that having worked in civilian corporate world, when I'm at work, my question is always, what are we doing, and why are we doing this? And now that you say mission, that sums it up perfectly. Like, what and why is the same thing as a mission. So absolutely.
And then even things, your second and third order of effect of leadership, because obviously we are in real estate and people tend to think that the mission is to sell as many houses as possible, where that just scratches the surface. The mission is really helping as many people as possible. Mm-hmm. It's not selling, that gives a bad connotation when you say selling. I'm not a used car salesman, not saying that field is horrible, but they're the ones that get the brunt of the stereotype of salesperson. So it's really about how many people can I help, and what am I doing to help? And it really comes from a place of empathy. And when you lose your empathy, you lose your leadership. You become a dictator, and we've already seen how that plays out.
So let me ask you this. You mentioned that when one joins the military, you go through it's like a given. It's mandatory. You go through leadership training. Do you think the same should happen maybe at Black Lion when you take on an agent or administrative staff, that they should go through some type of leadership training?
It's a little harder on the civilian side, at least being an entrepreneur and taking people through that, because in the military, again, you have basic training or some kind of initial training that you go through, and they tear you down. They take away all your civilianness, if you will, and they teach you how to be a soldier, an airman, a sailor. They teach you these things. A Marine, they teach you these things, right? When you have somebody that put in an application, went through the interview process, and came to work for you, it's a different way that we're approaching that leadership, right? I think we do a good job by empowering our younger agents when they come in. We give them responsibilities and things to do, right, Rain? Right, right. And it seems daunting, I believe, at first, and they don't understand it. But the ones who survives, the one who lasts, they tend to be a bit stronger, in my opinion. And the biggest thing about leadership is you're always learning and growing. So as long as you have that thirst to learn and grow, it's there. As far as structural leadership, by empowering our agents and allowing them to do certain things, that's part of it. But we also do send people to training, whether it be some kind of sales training or even in the local area going to workshops, that sort of thing. I think that helps as well.
Okay. Yeah, that was going to be my next question. For the audience, how we grow our leaders here at Black Lion. And so for you, right, because me looking at a person and determining if they have leadership potential probably looks a lot different than if you look at a person and to determine if they have a leadership potential. What do you look for in a person, or what about a person says, okay, that person has what it takes to be a leader?
That's another great question, because we in the military believe that you could be trained to be a leader, and you have people who are natural leaders, people who just automatically jump out and do things, and people tend to follow those people. When I look for a leader, I look for somebody who's willing to stand up not only for themselves, but the people around them. And they're always striving to do the right thing, even when nobody's looking. And that's probably the most cliche thing that I've ever heard while being in the military. If you walk by a piece of paper, even though nobody's looking, pick it up, throw it away, that sort of thing. So I'm always inspired by the people that tend to want to do the right thing, tend to lead with empathy. Those are the people I'm most drawn to, and those are the people, because I could teach you everything else. There's some things, like if you're a liar, if you have horrible traits, horrible character traits, like a liar, you can't fix that character trait.
Right.
They have to have something happen in their life for that to be fixed. If you're a thief, that's, again, a liar and a thief, they run hand in hand, if you ask me, and you just can't fix those things, not until something happens in their life to where they say, you know what, I'm going to change that behavior. But you can't. It for me, it's a character flaw. Yeah. So you can't out-train a character flaw, in my opinion.
Right. You also mentioned teaching leadership, but have you ran across any situations where a person just wasn't teachable?
Yeah, all the time. Or I should say that they're not. I won't say that they're not coachable. They're not
teachable, trainable.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that. I would say more specifically, maybe I am not the person, because I think one thing that was a flaw for me coming out of the military is that I could help and train everybody to be their greater self, where that's not true. I am not for everybody, and I have to be, as a leader, I have to be okay with that. And at a certain point, I have to know when I've reached my limit to leadership because I've been known to hold on to people that shouldn't be here or be around a little bit or a lot longer than what they should, which empowered them to do more, right? That goes against our culture. And that was a failure as a leader on my behalf, because at some point a leader has to know when to look somebody in the eye and tell them you're just not a right fit.
Right.
Not right now, at least.
But it shows that, you see what you see in people. Like you probably hold on to them because you see something in them, maybe potential in them. And if I push just a little bit harder, if they work just a little bit harder, then they would become what it is that you see. Right.
Sure.
Question for you, right? So I view you as a leader, right? I think you're an amazing leader. But my question to you is, if everyone at Black Lion led like you, right, what would the culture look like?
Ah, man, that's tough, because I don't know if everybody should lead like me, because I do have a lot of blind spots. I don't think everybody should lead like me. I would like everybody to find their leadership style and lean into that. As far as culture wise, I do believe that even though we can have different types of leaders and different types of leadership, we could all have one culture. Mm-hmm. And again, it's leading with empathy. It's about doing the right thing. The money's going to come. Mm-hmm. When you're doing business, the money's going to come. When you're doing great business, money's going to come. Money is just, it's a way to see how efficient you are at your business, but the money's going to come as long as you're doing the right thing. And the culture is leading with empathy. So
okay. So what you're saying is the
So bottom line, I don't necessarily need people to lead like me, because I think everybody has their own way of leading. For example, you are a quiet assassin, right? I think people will rather, when it comes to getting bad news, they'll rather come to me than you, because, when they go to you, it's more of, this is what it is. You didn't follow X, Y, and Z. You didn't follow these processes. And it comes across different when they dealing with you. Not that's necessarily good or bad. It's just your approach is different, and I appreciate it, because you could touch somebody that I necessarily couldn't touch in that way. Conversely, I think Rain and Jordan have interesting leadership styles. Jordan, he leads from a place of, I'm going to show you better than I'm going to tell you, type thing. Rain is a little bit bubbly, where she's going to pay attention and she's going to make you smile and convince you to do things that way. Abe is politely direct, right? Gary loves to play around, but when Gary dials in, he could be very direct. So everybody has a different leadership style, and I'm learning from them. I just so happen to be the guy with the responsibility to be in charge of Black Lion. I feel like anybody here could have been in charge of Black Lion, and I love that.
Interesting. It's interesting because I thought that leadership, there was just one style of leadership, and I thought that, you had to be vocal to be a leader, and you had to be not necessarily loud, but, kind of laying the hammer down. And it's interesting to learn that there are so many different ways to lead an organization. And it's just really, it's intriguing to study. So you mentioned earlier that one of the core values of leadership is leading with integrity. What other values do you think should lead and guide a leader here at Black Lion or a leader out in the world?
So it was leading with empathy.
Well, that part, and
right.
then earlier.
So empathy, and the reason why I use empathy is because I think it encompasses integrity, truthfulness. It encompasses a lot of things. So that's why I look at, because I could look at your situation and I could say, you know what, that's a tough situation, and I could put myself in your shoes. And that's tough for a lot of people to do, because we've all been in business long enough to know that one person is like, hey, bro, it's all about the dollars for me. Dollars make dollars, right? And they go after it in a greedy, stingy way, which is not appealing to me. And I don't think that you're looking at your fellow human in the right way if the only thing you're looking at them is a dollar sign. So that to me is a problem. Um, yeah.
Okay. But what about accountability?
So the great thing about any leader is, accountability and responsibility, right? Being able to hold somebody accountable, hold yourself accountable and responsible. One thing that I learned when I came to Black Lion, or when I started Black Lion, I started taking on agents, is I learned that I have to be more to the point, um, provide expectations. In the military, we would call it expectation management. What was hard for me back in the day was, give me the mission, let me run with the mission. And I assumed everybody worked like that. But then I learned in order to have a very functional team, I had to sit down and explain to each one of the team members, this is why you're an integral part to the team. And this is what I need you to do. These are your steps, that sort of thing. And actually put it on paper. That was probably the part that I was missing the most, because I could say to somebody, this is what I want you to do. This is what I want you to do. But I learned when I started putting it on paper, I guess it was a guide or a reference for somebody to come back to, and I guess where I'm getting the long way to answer this question, for me, being a visionary and me being the guy that doesn't need a lot of explanation, I viewed everybody else that way. Whereas I've learned over the years that not everybody has that. Some people need a little bit more direction. And that was a tough part. That was a thing.
One of the things that I found interesting, or that I learned about leadership, I remember working at a unnamed place and working under someone, and
An unnamed person.
An unnamed person at an unnamed place at a unnamed location. And this person was the leader, the quote unquote leader of the organization. But what I came to learn is that this person wasn't a leader. Even though they led the organization, they weren't a leader. They were more of a manager or a supervisor. And there's a big difference. I think oftentimes managers, you said something along the lines of telling people what to do, right? You point them in that direction. But I believe that leaders often are in the trenches with their people. Like, they get down there, and you have servant leaders who actually, they serve the people that they're leading by pouring into them, by helping them, by, just pushing the mission forward. And I just learned that there is a huge difference between someone who manages people and someone who actually leads people. So,
well, I mean, that is true, and that's an interesting concept, or an interesting observation, I should say, because I learned in the military, and even getting out of the military, that leadership is not one-sided; it's multifaceted, right? So you can lead in the trenches, right? You can be in the trenches with your people, first in, last out mentality. I'm there with my guys. I'm slinging mud with my guys. I'm digging foxhole with my guys. You could do that, but you quickly learn one thing about that approach. If I'm down here slinging mud, who's supervising? Who's making sure the job is really getting done? And that could be a problem, but there's a time for it.
Right.
There's a time.
Or having at least the willingness to do that.
Yeah.
Like, if it
definitely
came down to it, I have to be out there in the trenches with my people.
And that helps with motivation and morale. Such and such was able to take their jacket off, roll up their sleeves, come down in the trenches and be in the trenches with us. They're willing to go out there and sell with us. They're willing to go knock doors. They're willing to do the dirty work with us. They're not just sitting up there in the ivory tower looking down. But then you also have organizational leadership where you can't leave. You can't go out there. You have to sit up in the ivory tower, and you do have to lead from the tower strategically. So, and then there's every level in between that, right? So there is leadership is not one side. I feel like people max their leadership out sometimes. I was guilty of this at one point where I only used one tool. I used the hammer a lot more than what I was supposed to. And it took a older crowd of troops to be like, nah, Big Saw, listen, all that yelling you doing, we good, man. We going home. And it took for that to happen. in order for me to calm down.
Right.
Um, I've learned that sometimes it's better just to, hey, let's go get something to eat. Let's talk about this thing. There's other times where you have to embarrass somebody out in public, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's different ways because everybody moves slightly different, and one size leadership doesn't fit all.
Right.
So I think in the times where you're talking about certain types of people, I've come across people where they said that all they know is the direct approach, direct, and they think that's outstanding leadership, but it's not.
Yeah.
I used to think that, pulling Joe to the side and talking to him all nice and sweet was soft, but that was a blind spot for me.
Makes sense. Um, is leadership uncomfortable for you at any point?
I believe that for most leaders, dealing with difficult decisions can be uncomfortable. For me, in Black Lion, the hardest parts I've ever had to deal with is letting somebody go. Little bit of vulnerability here. I know I had a tear in my eye for one person we let go because I was like, I really like this person, but they're just not cutting it, right? And no matter what we do, they're not cutting it. And we're losing money behind this person.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw the potential, and it was just what they were going through that was preventing them from being their greater self. And it hurt to let that person with talent go. But I had to cut that person away in order to protect the rest of the business. And I feel like any true leader that tells you that they don't struggle with certain things or certain decisions, or there's certain decisions that hasn't come back to haunt them, I feel like they're not being honest, truthful, and I don't think they really has a grasp of leadership because it is hard. There are hard decisions, and you do live with some regret when you make the wrong decision, or even haunted with the what if decision.
Yep, that makes sense. Is to hear you say that, because leaders often they come off as confident, and even when they make decisions, make difficult decisions, they come off as being confident in those decisions, and you would never know from some leaders, you included, that they've made decisions that maybe they second guessed or that they weren't as confident in. So to hear you say that is it's eye opening, right? So, is there anything else that you want to add as it relates to leadership, Black Lion?
No, one thing that I do want to talk about when it comes to leadership, the motivation behind some leaders.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to touch on that because I've been paying attention lately to our world politics and world government and U.S. politics and policies.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a different leadership that I'm learning that exists behind closed doors that I never really thought about. And it's this pleasing other people leadership, right? Where they are given the title, like I think that's what you were alluding to before, is they have a title that they are in a presumptuous place of leadership because of the title, director of, or that sort of thing, president, vice president, those sort of titles, right? But I'm looking at some of those leaders that take either elected roles or that sort of thing, and they have to appease not what's right, but the people or the constituents that put them there, more especially when they are bought, right? Mm-hmm. If somebody puts X amount of dollars in my campaign or into my fund, what do I owe them? Like what was that money for? And am I truly leading from a place of empathy at that point, or am I doing it to make sure I could get the popular vote, or I could get the admiration of the ones who put money in my coffers.
Is that leadership though?
So again, that's the part where I'm struggling with, right?
Mm-hmm.
From me on the outside looking in, that's a good question. Is that leadership, or what is that? Because in order for me to get elected, I have to give certain promises. I have to convince people that I am the best person to work for your priorities, right? I'm working for your priorities. But am I truly working for your priorities if I am getting massive amounts of campaign money or massive amount of money? One has to wonder. And for me, that has been a question that I have, because I know if somebody gave me X amount of dollars, it now becomes a job. I, there's an expectation, right? And is it coming from a good place? I was watching a movie and somebody was like, all politicians start off in a
With the
great place,
right.
right? But once the higher you go, what does that look like? What does
Yeah.
that money do to you? And I think that's something worth exploring in the future about.
I just question whether or not that's real, if that is true leadership, especially as it relates to elected officials, because I believe that an elected official is elected to look out for the best interest of the people that they were elected to represent.
Right,
And if
but
you're taking
yeah,
money,
right.
right, if you're taking money from these people and you owe them favors, then you're looking out for, and you provide those favors, right? You're not looking out for the people, the majority of the people you're elected to represent, because I mean, let's be honest, most people are not in a position to pay off politicians, right? And so you're looking out for the best interests of the people who pad your pockets. And so is that real leadership, or is that just
I mean,
being
it
paid
could be,
off?
right? Because I mean, from the definition I gave, providing purpose, direction, and motivation. Once you get there in a certain spot,
Mm-hmm.
right, you're supposed to be providing purpose, direction, and motivation. The question, and I don't want to say that any politicians that I know are bought. However, when we look at the news as of late,
It's
we question.
obvious, right?
Well, we question it. I
Right.
won't say it's obvious, right? I do question the validity of certain statements, and I question why certain things are done. Um, was there a backroom conversation about, hey, if I give you X amount of dollars, or was it implied, or I don't know. I don't know. And I think that's where it becomes hard, especially when talking politics, when taking money, what is the right answer in that?
Mm-hmm.
What's too much money to give or take? Because it obviously takes money to run a campaign. Unfortunately, you could have a great person with the biggest heart that's in a campaign, but because they can't raise the money,
Mm-hmm.
they don't have a good campaign, but they might have been the right person. So for me, I struggle with that just from the outside looking in. I tell people that I've been 21 plus years military, so this whole politics campaign thing is interesting to me, but more to follow. We'll see.
Yeah. I wouldn't question their leadership based upon just taking money. I would look at what they had to do to get the money. And then after
Yeah,
they've received
exactly.
the money, what they're doing with the money, or what they're doing with the power that they gained from receiving the money, right? And if they're only looking out for the best interest of the people who gave them the money, if they're making decisions that benefit only a small group of people, then I would question their leadership. But that's,
So you've been on me about this leadership thing for the past few minutes, right?
mm-hmm.
So here's a question for you. Do you feel as a woman or a black woman, and you can answer them separately or together,
Mm-hmm.
do you feel that your leadership is questioned being either one of those?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I believe that as a woman, and more especially as a black woman, my, not just my leadership, but my capabilities, my knowledge, my decisions. I do believe that there is, in the world, that there is an underlying tone. Well, not it's not underlying. A lot of times is blaring tone of misogyny and definitely racism. And then when you combine the two, right? So I believe that as a leader, I do have to work harder, not necessarily to convince people that I'm capable or that my decisions are solid, but I do have to show that I am professional, and that I am well versed and knowledgeable in whatever area of expertise. So yeah, it's most definitely questioned. So I hope that answered your question.
Okay. So I know we've been talking lately. Is there anybody that you look at in the world as, hey, that is a great leader?
As
And who would that
women,
be?
yeah, there are multiple women, and I call them my aunties.
Okay.
Really. So
Who are these people and why?
so obviously number one, and I know that a lot of people look up to this woman, but Michelle Obama, because
Well, that's a given.
it's absolutely a given. And if anybody questions her as a businesswoman or as a leader, or they're crazy. She leads with class. She's intelligent. She's articulate. She's well spoken. She represents, or she pursues initiatives that help the people, and she's inspirational. You know, she little black girls can look at up to Michelle Obama and be like, and think to themselves that I can be where she is one day, right? Another is Felicia Rashad,
Mm-hmm.
you know, probably because of fictional character, but she, even from what I've seen, because I've never met her in person, but she has just such a regal aura, and she's so classy and so well put together and so wise, right? And the most recent one is Jasmine Crockett.
That's my girl right there.
Right, because she's a firecracker. And I think that she speaks to the people that she knows how to speak to the people that need to be spoken to in today's climate. And they hear her, right? And, you know, I think that she will be one of, if not the leader of, a movement that shifts the political climate, right? And so those three women. I like Tabitha Brown, you know, because she's like an old country homeschool auntie, you know, and I watch her videos. They give me inspiration and motivation and encouragement. Yeah, I think that was it.
So I want to go back to Jasmine Crockett.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I watch things where people say that she's hood and she's this and she's that. But I'm going to tell you, the reason why I really mess with Jasmine Crockett is when I watch her, what committee does she sit on again? Oversight committee.
Yes.
When I watch her in the oversight committee and she decides to speak, she is probably the most, if not the most prepared speaker there. And she attacks her topics.
With facts.
With facts, exactly. She questions those who come with some kind of quasi argument.
The BS.
Yes. And she really attacks topics and she lays it out there. And it's almost like the whole mic drop thing.
Right.
Every time she does it,
Right.
when she's speaking for or against, even the back and forth between her and
Marjorie Taylor.
Not just Marjorie Taylor, because if you watch her, it's impressive because she goes after the men, the women, the entire committee, you know, to the point of even say, do we all agree? Can we not agree?
Right.
And just watching her, I won't say perform, but watching her in action is truly impressive. Man, woman, black, white, she's just impressive to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe that she really has a heart for the people.
Mm-hmm.
And it bothers me when people label her as hood, because why does our culture, you know, she's educated, but she's black, right? Why does our culture have to be hood, right? She's still articulate. She still conveys her thoughts and her messages in a way that everybody can understand. And, you know, she gets her points across in a clear and concise, like she's just chef's kiss, right? So yeah, she's on that list. I added her to that list this last year.
Okay. So now let me ask you this locally, um, within Black Lion, how do you feel your leadership, like what's your leadership style if you had to give it a leadership style or if you had to describe it? Because I tell you, if there's a problem, people want to talk to you faster than they talk to me, unless it's something bad. So what it
Well, you described it earlier. Quiet, right? Quiet leader. I don't think that I always have to lay the hammer down. I do believe in just modeling leadership.
real quick, Rain, I just want you to know that when Shan does lay the hammer down, it is laid. There is no coming back from that hammer. Okay. No backsies.
No backseats. I don't believe that I have to be loud. I did question my leadership because I'm not a loud person, and I did question whether or not I was capable of being a leader. But now I value my leadership style in being not in the forefront, not in the spotlight, and not loud. So I just lead by example. I know that's cliche, but I lead by example, and that's my style.
All right. So let's move on. So this weekend,
This weekend, hey,
you were out on the town. You had your gown on.
we all were out on the town.
We'll talk about it.
So we attended the United Negro College Fund Mayor's Ball.
I bet you can't say that 3 times fast.
United Negro College Fund Mayor's Ball. One. You can keep going.
Nah, go ahead.
So we attended that on, was that Saturday?
Saturday, yes.
We attended that on Saturday, and it was a time. A time was had.
So, tell us, what was it for, about, what was
So
your impression of it?
the purpose was to raise money for minority students to attend college. It was a scholarship or a fundraising event. There were a few mayors from Hampton Roads there. There were leaders from Hampton Roads there. It was at the Newport News Marriott. We got dressed up. That's all I got.
Okay. Okay. And Sunday, you were out and about.
Sunday, we went to a Jack and Jill cruise on the Spirit of Norfolk. It was also a fundraising event. We were invited by colleagues of ours, and that was a good time too. I think the food was good. We had mimosas, and we were out on the water, laughing, having
Spirit
a
of
good time.
Norfolk, right?
The Spirit
Okay.
of Norfolk, with professional people. Everybody looked good, dancing, eating, having a good time. And we learned about the Jack and Jill Foundation. And forgive me, but I do not remember the name of the other organization. But the purpose of the organization is to help those who are afflicted with breast cancer. So,
And lastly, what's coming up? You were telling me about.
yeah, on Thursday at the James River Country Club, there is a women's symposium, and there are several leaders: Sharon Scott, Tina Vick. I don't remember the names of the other ladies. I'd have to look at the flyers, but it looks like a panel of about 5 or 6 women leaders from Newport News getting together to discuss various topics related to the city of Newport News.
Okay, and big shout out to my guy Justin Kennedy, because he's the one that's putting this on. He does an outstanding job doing documentaries and things like that. So this is a documentary. I don't know if he has it anywhere, but it's a documentary that he put together for Women's History Month. And I think this is the event to kind of bring that in.
It's Women's History Month.
Right. So
Oh, don't hate.
with that being said, I think it's going to be a good time. Like I said, shout out to Justin Kennedy and all the other people that had a part to do with it. I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of people that had something to do with it. So shout out to him, his team, the ladies of Newport News that were highlighted on this video, this slash documentary. And I can't wait to be there. It should be a good time.
Yeah, I agree. It should be a good time. I'm always excited to sit at the feet of successful, influential women and glean from them. So I'm excited about it.
All right. With that being said, I think that's a wrap for today. What you think, Rain? Thumbs up? All right. Rain gave us a thumbs up, so I believe it's a wrap.
See you next time.
Peace.